Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the stream. I hope everybody is not too tired from the week. I'm a bit knackered, as usual, but, the weeks are very long at the moment for whatever reason. It's just how it is. But we're here. We are gathered here tonight to enjoy the utter cheese fest that is Deathrace 2000. I have some fond memories of this in some respects, because I do remember back in the day, it was one of those films that had a certain amount of kind of legend about it. Mostly because the subject matter of it is, kind of grotesque in some respects, but the film itself is very comic book, so it doesn't really deserve, or didn't deserve, the kind of reputation it got, but I'm sure it didn't suffer terribly because of it. But I do remember the schoolyard talk about this movie, and it was just like, people they're going around like hit and run, and it's like a sport and all that kind of stuff. Technically accurate, but so we're going to be watching that. We'll watch that in a little while. Hey Glenn and the regulars, hello, Adam, and everybody who's here. Suddenly everybody's kind of jumped on board, which is really, really good, because there was looked like there was only about 3 people tonight, which is fine. I'm happy to do this if there's a couple of people out there or whatever. It's not like being a big live entertainment kind of thing, where you're at the theatre and there's one person in the audience. And in my career, I've had one show where there was one person in the auditorium, and it's quite embarrassing. Deathrace 2000 is a masterpiece of cinema that would never be made today. Oh, well, I mean, they did remake it, didn't they? Or kind of like they did a whole series of it, didn't they? Is it Jason Statham? I think. God, they look fucking awful. See, Jason Statham is one of those actors that I really, really want to like. It's not necessarily his performances that are a problem, but a lot of the films he's in are just absolutely antithetical to kind of everything I enjoy in a movie. Kerry says, not too tired. 13 to 15 hour days tired me now. Jesus, what are you doing? That's crazy. Oh dear. Gav says, it just goes straight off, doesn't it? Infamous film, watched it not too long ago for the first time, was surprised how entertaining it was, to be honest. Yes, it's a very silly film. And it is. It's not quite what you expect. Certainly when people tell you what the premise of this film is, it sounds like it should be like really, really, really awful, but it's not. It's kind of like The Running Man, but its tongue even further stuck in its cheek. Dear, oh dear. Love the James Caan version of Rollerball, as well as which fits similar criteria. Yeah. Dear, oh dear. But hello Simon, it's good to see you again. Glenn, do you want to do something on the 22nd? The 22nd? What's happening on the 22nd? I'm not quite sure what's happening that week at the moment. I had sort of planned to do perhaps something on the Friday, or maybe the Saturday, but I'm playing it by ear at the moment, because I guess it's a little bit of housekeeping. Next Friday, I'm not going to be doing a live stream, because I'm going to be basically packing my bags ready to go home to see my brother, which will be really nice to spend a few days up there, and then I come back like the Thursday, and I'm tossing up whether or not I really need to just knuckle down and get the rest of the writing for the Devil's review done, or whether I do a live stream. And some might go, oh, I not do both. If I start writing during the day, I ain't going to feel much like doing a live stream at the end of it. And I'd like to come at the end of this holiday that I got the week off. It'd be nice to get out the holiday with a few days of just chilling out. Oh, is it really? Okay. I am terrible with birthdays, Kerry. Dear. Hit me up on Facebook at some time if you've got some thoughts there, Kerry. So, yeah. 7 to 8 hours in the office and 5 hours on commission. Oh, okay, right. Well, you must be rolling in the money, unless the gas company's taking it all away from you. Thanks, Putin. Asshole. Dear, oh dear. But yeah, the Stephen Deathrace films are a figment of your imagination. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember if it was Statham in it. It's someone, I don't know. It might just be fucking with my head. But those things are, yeah, the remakes, modern ones. Yeah, it's Fast and the Furious basically with a lot more hit and run. And I'm not a fan of the Fast and Furious either. I have little sense of humour for that kind of film for some reason. Maybe I'm getting old. Well, I definitely am getting old because it's my birthday next month and I hit the half century. So, well, next month, I say next couple of weeks' time. Yeah, and I hit the half century. So, yes. It's one of those things. I'm getting so grey these days. I get a lot more grey in the old hair there. Which I don't mind actually, you know, but yeah, just one of those things. Only thing I don't like about the aging thing is, you know, everything aches a lot more. It's a lot harder to kind of do some of the silly shit I used to do, especially at work. Steve Manley did the first remake and then 2 prequels with Luke. Oh God, yeah. I mean, he's not a bad actor, him, but yeah, just. Man, it comes to that, and I think it's because they all have the sort of same. There's something about the aesthetic of them. When it comes to that, when it comes to like the Texas Chainsaw remake and kind of like the modern ones, the new ones, and all of those, I tend to find them. They all have that same kind of, for want of a better word, temperature, visual kind of temperature. It's kind of weird. And I think it's partly the CGI that's used in them and all that kind of stuff, but it's just, I don't know, it all feels very plastic to me. It's kind of weird. I'm mixing a lot of metaphors tonight, and I've only had about 2 inches of beer. Didn't Deathrace 2000 remake rip off the Emil's Robocop death? Quite possibly. They'd have called it a homage, wouldn't they? But yeah, I don't mind stuff like that. Yeah, that's fine. But they tend to be kind of like it's. There's very little between the ears of a lot of those movies. They look at a movie and go, yeah, we can do that better. And technically, you know, in terms of visual stuff, yes, they can potentially do it better and all that kind of stuff. Certainly, you know, in the case of what we're about to watch tonight, because that movie was incredibly low budget, you know, and it is, you can tell it's almost bloody Halloween costume kind of levels. And so, yeah, you know, in terms of that kind of end of filmmaking, yes, the remakes do it better. However, they seem to lack a lot of the soul of the original movies. And the thing is, you know, as daft a movie as Deathrace 2000 is, there is something about the enthusiasm that was done in it. It's a much more original kind of thing, although it kind of pays homage to many things in some respects. But because it sort of did that first, it tends to be the case that it was fresher, it was more interesting at the time. But there you go. Skim through the new Hellraiser. It looks awesome. Yeah, I'd like to, but I don't have to subscribe to her. I don't know. Maybe it'll come to Prime at some point. I doubt it because it's a really competitive company, isn't it? But if it comes onto physical media, I will definitely give it a check. It does look really good. I like in Rollerball they have this overarching corporate America theme, and that's the thing, isn't it? There's a lot of them. A lot of the films did that around that time because you know, people tend to think of the sort of, for want of a better word, the anti-capitalist kind of thing, but it's also anti-corporate kind of interests of a lot of films was particularly strong back then, but people think of it as being a very new thing, and it's not. It's always been one of those concerns. It's been that way for a fairly long time, and you see that in plenty of movies. Certainly during the late 70s and in the 80s, it became quite a big thing because Reaganomics and all that kind of stuff going on, the Thatcherism and some of those things, although they weren't waving the communist flag or anything like that, it was something that kind of resonated with certain parts of the audience, even if they didn't directly realise it. Not subscribed to anything, but would definitely be buying the physical once it's out. Is it actually coming out though? Because I hope it is. This is one of the risks with the whole kind of streaming thing is they just go, no, you just have to subscribe, and there's a whole bunch of films that get kind of squirreled away unless you pay money to go with them, or monthly. But I do kind of wish I would hope at the very least that they do a bit more of the Amazon Prime kind of model where you can essentially buy the film individually and have it as part of your collection so you can watch it whenever you want. Dear. Corman himself made a belated remake sequel to Deathrace 2000. It was awful, yes. Corman is a funny guy in some respects, because there's a lot of stuff that people look back at very fondly, but tend to forget the kind of absolute dross that he kind of kicked out as well. It was very much a kind of scattergun, shotgun kind of approach to filmmaking, which is, admirable in its own right in some respects. And I think the modern day equivalent's probably Blumhouse. They do some films which are, in my opinion, fantastic, and they do a lot of stuff which is absolute trash. But they give a lot of ideas, a lot of chance. And as a business model, I think it's kind of interesting because they take a few chances, by just not even a big chance necessarily, but they'll throw a few 100,000 or whatever at a cheap project and just go make a movie. It's not too big a loss if it doesn't make anything. But then they'll go out and do another film which is much more of a passion project, shall we say. Right, at this point I'm going to say link should be in the description if you want to go hook yourselves up. We will get started shortly with the movie. It is just going to start at 000. I had found a better quality version, but it was one of those ones where the uploader kind of put the subscribe kind of things kind of appearing every so often, which I find intensely irritating, to the point I would rather watch it at VHS quality, which is more what this is. And to be honest, Deathrace 2000 kind of benefits a little bit from the fudge. So, it's owned by physical, and same with books and music. I will buy a combination of books. I don't have much room for books, but if there's a book I really want, just actually show you some of the ones I'm kind of going through at the moment. And actually, interestingly, there's a guy that has been following me for pretty much my entire YouTube time. Now has a PhD and has sent me a copy of the book he's just written, or is sending me a copy of the book he's just written. Sort of looking at postmodernism in modern, you would say modern horror, but basically like 70s, 80s horror, that kind of stuff, which I thought was fascinating. And he was telling me that it was me that kind of sort of pointed him in the direction of postmodernism with the Videodrome review. And I was a bit oh, dude, I'm so sorry. I would not want to do a doctorate that involved fucking postmodernism. So he's sending me a copy of the book, which is kind of cool. So it might be a good read. But yeah, when I get physical books, reference books is kind of sort of thing I tend to get because I find it easier to read from these kind of things, on this kind of subject. If it's fiction, it's not too bad in digital, and so in that respect, I don't mind having it on digital. But I've got a whole bunch of these things, some astrophotography books and stuff like that. So, and this one, which is it's another YouTuber, and he's basically used very basic cameras to make this, to put together this book of kind of inspiring shots for people, whatever the camera they have, which is just a really cool idea. And he's an interesting guy. But yeah, I have an obscene amount of books and music. My ex-girlfriend was very, very big on having physical books. When it comes to like my DVD collection and stuff like that, she had the equivalent in books and stuff like that. Of course, with books, it takes up about 3 times more space. So she had boxes full of books and shelves full of books and all that kind of stuff. It was actually one of the things I found quite charming about her. I'm not quite sure she felt the same about the movies, but there you go. I don't watch anything that's modern. I don't mind watching modern films. I think actually, when you talk about kind of like some of the films that have come over the last out over the last like 10 years, there has been some very, very good modern horror with a particular vibe. And I don't think it's got a name as of this point, but as a kind of like type of horror. But it's sort of psychological kind of horror and that kind of stuff, which is going on. You got like your Hereditaries and Midsummer and the Suspiria remake, amongst quite a few films, and it's really fascinating to see these films that have this kind of texture, which I think is in part to do with kind of like modern filmmaking techniques and equipment, but there is something quite interesting about the kind of pacing and the texture of a lot of these movies that have come out, which are very similar when you look at something like Midsummer and Hereditary and even like I say the Suspiria film and a bunch of others, probably even Don't Breathe and things like that. There's this slowing down of the horror these days. It's not ramped up to the max as much in a lot of these movies, and I kind of like that. Sort of gives the film time to sort of breathe and generate an atmosphere. It's not for everyone. And it's interesting that it comes in the face of what is generally regarded as a generation of people who have an attention span of a strobe-lit goldfish. Not necessarily something I hold with, and certainly not necessarily the fault of anyone, because entertainment in general has been very much geared towards short, fast fixes of entertainment, and that's largely a product of the laziness of the mainstream media companies. They don't want you to remember it. They want you to sort of consume it and then move on. For the most part, there are a few exceptions, but yeah. Still enjoyed a lot of recent horrors, but it's been ages since I said I've got to get that and went out and bought it after. Yeah, it's. I think it's easy to kind of forget that great movies don't come out that often, and it's always been the case. We look back at like the 80s and go, so many great films, and yes there were, but it's a small fraction of the wider scope of movies that was out at the time. There was so much shit. When people sort of look back at the 70s and go, oh, it's one of the best decades for music, or the 60s go, one of the best decades for music. And you can always, without thinking too hard, pull out a whole bunch of music from the time that was far, far, far worse than people seem to give the decade credit for. But I think there has been something of a renaissance with thoughtful, slow horror movies. What I would call kind of a genuine horror rather than sort of splatter. I mean, Hereditary has one of the most shocking moments in it that I fucking remember for a long time, with the little girl after the accident. and it's like, wow. When they showed that on screen, I was like, holy shit. I think I had to actually suppress me saying that out loud in the cinema at the time, and that's pretty impressive, to move me to be actually genuinely shocked at a moment in the film, because it was just one of those moments you sort of go, I did not expect him to actually show that, and it's a very quiet film. It doesn't dwell a lot on that kind of stuff, so when it does happen, it really stands out. Pretty much against consumer entertainment. I mean, it has its place, but it's become so dominant. I think it's such a shame that not a lot of Hollywood films bother much these days. And I think, I mean, partly that's because I've spent so much time looking at these little independent films from here, there, and everywhere that I've kind of learnt to appreciate a story in the most unexpected places. And it's one of the things that I will always stand by these kind of movies, because for all the dross that's in these things, there are so many gems, so many films where the independent spirit has been kind of, I want to make a good film and tell a story, and telling a story has become secondary to blowing your eyes out with special effects. Even the original Star Wars was trying to tell a story, albeit a very old, many times told story, just in a different setting, but it was trying to tell a story. I think one of the weirdest ones for that, I think actually, because when I talk about Tron, the film Tron, the original one, people are taken aback a little bit when I kind of say it's not a particularly interesting story. It's a very dull story. In fact, it's almost got no story. It's a series of events as much as anything. That's not to say that I don't like it. I do. I think I've really enjoyed that film. I've got a lot of nostalgic feelings for that movie. The sequel, Legacy, I think had a better story, but it was almost pointless, the setting, in my opinion. But the original story was, for the first Tron, I characterised it in the review that I did that it was all about a copyright dispute, and that's essentially what the film is. And this dispute essentially takes place inside a computer world. Why it sticks in my memory, that film, is just kind of like because of what the film is, and that's what really stood out for me. It had a lot of horror in the 80s. A lot of it was in the slasher genre, and that was fine, but it must not be the only type of horror film. No. I mean, I've enjoyed plenty of slasher films, but I enjoy them a lot less than a film like Suspiria. As for instance, Dawn of the Dead is a great example of a splatter movie that is capable of being very intelligent as well, or at least having enough room to be thought of as intelligent. Modern film had to go out and buy was The Lighthouse, great atmosphere. I think The Lighthouse was great. Simon does not agree. But I don't think it's the kind of film that Simon is particularly taken with anyway. And that's fine. We all have our tastes. The amount of times I get people saying, Possession was terrible. And it's like, Possession's a really good film. From the take that I have of it, I appreciate the fact that the film is so steeped within Sam Neill's character. It's his psyche that's telling the story, if you like. It's kind of telling on itself as it goes. It's fascinating for that. But I do have a little bit of a skewed way of looking at films, which is partly what helps me write the reviews that I do in the style that I do. Because I think I'm a little bit odd in that respect. But enough people seem to appreciate that. I also enjoyed Lighthouse along with The Witch and Hereditary. Yeah, The Witch was pretty interesting. I'm going to watch it again. I do have it. But yeah, Romero manages to slip in larger topics and themes in a situational film. It's a funny thing with Romero. I think to some extent, I think he's put that stuff in, but I think to some degree he's done it almost subconsciously. It's either that or he's just got that writing style that's very just loose enough for these things to sort of form around it, and he'll have a kind of very vague, nebulous idea that people start kind of seeing all these connections, and that's not to denigrate Romero himself, but if you see the interviews with him and stuff like that, his opinion kind of changed a little bit over time, and that sort of thing sort of shifted with the audience somewhat. He sort of adopted that as a kind of more vocalized explanation of what was going on, and it's perfectly fine. I think there was always kind of something there. There's little things that he was interested by that kind of went into the film. We're not necessarily meaning to make a bigger picture, but it kind of, these various aspects kind of plug in. I've always said George Romero's very good at doing a microcosm of society. That's why his bigger pictures didn't work quite so well, because they tended to be a much wider picture, and you didn't need to do that. It's so much better when it's a smaller world and it's all about the characters and how those characters fit within that world. Rather than getting too bogged down with sort of geopolitics and stuff like that. We had a whole slew of what if the world ended kind of films, Mad Max and such. Yeah, the post-apocalyptic stuff was a big one in the late 70s, early 80s particularly. But it's always an interesting genre. The most most relevant these days, I guess. God, I don't ever see another day where that fucking film was relevant, but Threads. But yeah. Like The Witch and Lighthouse as well. Looking forward to Eggers' take on Nosferatu. Yeah, that could be interesting. That could be very interesting. Did you like Midsummer? Yes, I did. It is one of those films that I can't quite nail down exactly what it is I like about it. I think the narrative on it is a little loosey-goosey, but it's a film that kind of exists in this sort of strange, hazy world in which these sort of threatening things are happening. I think the thread of what the movie's the thread that the movie's hanging from is a little tenuous to some extent, but not enough to break the movie for me. I find something endlessly fascinating about it. Some people find it boring, and I can completely understand why. But for me, I find it just a wonderfully pensive atmosphere throughout it. I've not got bored watching it. I've watched it about 3 times. The Wicker Man, it was not. No, and I think there's only elements of it that kind of like actually that it was similar, but it's that sort of folk horror thing. I think beyond that, it's not The Wicker Man. But I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that you didn't like that film, to be honest with you, because I think it's a great film. It's a great film. It's a very good film. I particularly enjoyed it. I always find it a shame when people can't enjoy a movie, but then again, there's plenty of films that I don't enjoy that other people enjoy. Midsummer was a bit of a cop-out. I don't know, but you're welcome to your opinion on that one. What I will say is we will get started with the movie once I get a few thumbs up, and we'll get cracking with that. It's going to be starting from 000. So get yourselves all lined up and ready to go. Favourite British horror movie? Witchfinder General, possibly. Great film. Just wonderful atmosphere to it. But there's a few, it depends on what you actually describe as a British horror film. You could almost say The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue. It was a Spanish film, I think it was, but it's set in Britain. Funny enough, like I said during the watch along, it's one of those horror films that particularly captures the British countryside and British locals and all that kind of stuff without going down the line of being entirely cliched. So yeah, brilliant. Okay, we've got a few thumbs up. We all get started. So stand by your bets, folks. We are going to go in 5 and go on go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And that's a wonderfully cheap title card. Now, if there's anything that would kind of like set up the movie's sort of themes, it's opening to the Star Spangled Banner. Have you seen your video of shooting locations to the Living Dead at Manchester Morgue? Yes, I have, and I really enjoyed them. I hugely encourage anyone to go over to Simon's channel, Dark Angel 182, and go find it. In fact, Simon, if you want to post a link in the Rambleaholics, and I will share it on my main page on Facebook as well. Possibly on Twitter if I could be asked to go in there. Terrible Twitter. But yeah, opening with the Star Spangled Banner, kind of, there's a certain amount of signalling going on there to some extent. Because as mild as it is, there is some politics in this movie. Misses out the intro titles. Well, hopefully it's a fairly complete version. Otherwise I've screwed up, you know. What's that new? What's new about that? God damn. It's like an American Terry Wogan. I remember Deathrace 2000 was shown on a double bill with Enter the Dragon. He had the quad poster. Very nice. He's a bit of a fop, this character, isn't he? He's updated the location of the antique shop was demolished a couple of years back in the road pedestrianised. Oh, that's a shame. Plus the hospital has been turned into flats now. More things change, eh? If you want a road trip, buddy Simon. This commentary guy sets the tone well. Yes, it really does. It is utter cheese, this movie. This is complete and utter gorgonzola. I love the performance of this guy. I mean, the commentary in this film is fairly lightweight, to say the least, but it's kind of there. God damn, that chat's really let me type so frustrating that was. I think a couple of people have had a little bit of problems with the chat today. I'm not quite sure what's going on. It's not really on my end. You see, I mean, you got Nazis. It's instantly political. Did he really? Okay. So the commentary guy played essentially the same role in Ron Howard's film Grand Theft Auto, says Simon. I like this Rick Moranis looking character. Nazis, Nazis, as always, Nazis. That's just my computer. Sometimes the place where the chat appears doesn't show anything, so I can't see anybody's messages. Oh, god damn it, yeah. But it's good to see you, Kieran. Glad you're here. What's the timestamp? We are currently at 5 minutes and 16 seconds. You gotta love these cars, aren't you? It's just, don't you? It's just over the top. Oh, Mr. Frankenstein, how formal. Just call me Frank. Martin Cove of Karate Kid fame. John Kreese and Rocky Balboa together years before Rambo 2. Yes. That commentator really screams the 70s, doesn't he? I love the bayonet on the front of the car. It's like you need it. Oh, he's not arrived yet. He's coming. Oh, bless Sly. It's wonderfully over the top, isn't it? The production design, and it's one of the things I find quite charming about the movie. Is it's very barefaced about what it is. How anybody could take any offence to this movie, really, just because it is utterly ridiculous. And like you said earlier, you know, this movie had a reputation back in the day. Health and safety violations left, right, and centre coming from Slide AS. I was about to joke about somebody coming along to polish the car. Then the film just did it for me. It's this film just before Stallone became famous in Rocky. Yeah. See that cityscape when they had that wide shot of the city and that kind of thing. I mean, I'm guessing George Lucas watched this movie. And a messianic kind of like media mogul type. If you think about it, it's almost like, you know, the Purge is kind of a rip-off of this in some respects, isn't it? Same kind of story. Should have screened this film with Wacky Races playing first. Yes, it's a Wacky Races is just that great comparison in some respects. It's with more murder in this. You can tell Sly is having fun. Yeah, I imagine he was just, apart from anything else, probably very happy to be working because he was pretty hard up at the time, as I recall. This film is hilariously bad. It's bad, but it's bad in such a kind of like fuzzy kind of warm fuzzy kind of way. Um, and that's always been the biggest thing for me. Is like a bad film is not necessarily a bad film to watch. There's certain aspects of it which may be camp, cliche, all that kind of stuff, but it can just work as a solid piece of entertainment. And like with this, there's still a little bit of thought behind kind of the background to the story, which just gives you those little hints of things to grab onto that make the world work. A truly bad film for me is a film that it's only spectacle. When that's all that the film's got, because that gets tired and it ages very, very quickly. But you can have a badly made film, arguably, that actually does very interesting things. Wasn't Sly so hard up he had to be hard up in Party at Kitty and Stunts? Well, famously, he did make a adult movie at one point, didn't he? It's been a while since I've watched this. How were the racists scored, coming first and hitting as many civilians as possible? Right? They score points along the route, don't they? And I guess a win is coming in first is one aspect of it, but how many people take out is as important. Roger Corman himself once said, "There's always some pleasure you can derive from a bad movie." Yeah, yeah, and again, it's always about what you define as bad. I kind of have sort of two definitions really: a bad movie in terms of production values and performance and those kind of aspects. Can be one thing that can make a movie a bad movie, but it can be elevated by the story and the characters and all that kind of stuff. But then there's the bad movie, which is just so vacuous, it's not, really got that much to offer. Hello, Kerry. What you saying? Had to feed the fur babies and feathered ones. Had to look for one of the chicks. Couldn't find her. Fair enough. Kitty and Studs is that medium core adult film. Yeah. Look, it's Sarah Medden from. Yeah. I'll stop reading that comment because I'm being shit. The Resistance is a mob of backing singers from the 70s. Yes. Zombie Creeping Flesh is badly made, but it's hilariously good fun. It's watchable for all the wrong reasons, isn't it? It had some fairly fun gore and stuff. Just wondered if you Bruno Mattei films I can sit through. So deceptive. Good luck putting that mask back on while you're driving now. It's a trap. Right in the ghoulies. It's a wonderfully grisly death, isn't it? But it's not overly kind of like graphic, but you get a real kind of feel for that hit. That scene was cut from the original UK cinema release of Kel's Surprise. Before Kerry. Bayo knackered. Nice. It's a commitment to the cause. The race is supposed to be across America, but it was actually just filmed around California. It says budgetary concerns, isn't it? I like this Walter Cronkite knockoff. Much like Cannibal Run, yeah. I haven't watched it in a long time either, Kieran. It's a very entertaining film. It's a very playful film, isn't it? You know, they're just having a bullfight routine going on. You can't argue that it's not having a lot of fun. God, he's like a Radio 1 DJ, isn't he? Back for some more murder? All right. This is one of my favourite scenes coming up. Euthanasia Day at the geriatrics hospital. No, like kind of, yeah, I'm gonna die. Sweet merciful release of death. And a whole bunch of extras on trampolines. Inheritance Alley, yeah. He's like a foppish tool that's cosplaying as Steve Irwin, isn't he? What the size of those goddamn boots? Exposition, folks. So someone had the keys to the power generating plant when it was on a maintenance period. That's some cheese, isn't it? You gotta love the over cranking under camera and all that kind of stuff, haven't you? Jesus Christ. She go around a corner too fast, her boobs are going to flop out. Not necessarily a bad thing. Got to be at least 200 points. Baby go boom boom. Glad to see Martin Coe's as thick as he was in Last House, yes. He doesn't come across as a shining intellect in most of his roles, does he? I'm not sure. There is something about watching this in this sort of low-res kind of version, which is a little nostalgic for me, because I first saw this film on VHS, so it's more or less the experience I had when I first saw this film. I don't know if there's a, shall we say, upscaled version of this film. I guess there must be. Watch out, it's Brian Oblivion. You gotta love the contrast there, haven't you? Because it's like, for how frivolous this film is, you do get these kind of huge characterizations, very broad characterizations. The kind of the more prudish ones that are kind of like anti the Deathrace, which, you know, they're probably right, let's face it. Compared to the very exuberant and colourful, shall we say, pro-deathers. But you do get that kind of political vibe to the movie. Watch out, it's the Max Redrin incident. As long as she doesn't bend over and get her ass whipped by a boy dressed in a maid's outfit. I'm thinking he had daddy issues. So one of those routes did about, you know, at least 1.5 times the length of the shorter route, and still they all met at exactly the same time. There's that ego, Sly. You know, I kind of relate to Frankenstein. The only strength I have is simply talking about cinema. No, doing cinema. No, not doing cinema. Apparently, this was originally written as a serious film, but Corman realised it would work better as a black comedy, so it was rewritten. I think, given the budget, quite possibly, yeah. And certainly, you know, because they really sort of needed to appeal to a broader kind of audience, given the kind of margins they're sort of working on. Yeah, I mean, it's such a ridiculous idea in some respects. You see the kind of like um, a more serious take on this, which is like I say, The Purge. You know, it's pretty much the same kind of story. Well, it's pretty much the same story, just the methods are changed somewhat. So you're completely useless to every company in existence. No, not really. I mean, the thing is, yeah, getting out there and doing stuff. You know, particularly I take this with theatre and stuff like that as well. Um, when you got students who kind of like come to do the sort of things that I support, um, there's often this kind of idea, you know, in the back of their head that they'll go straight from university straight to like a West End job, maybe on the lower end of the cast, but that kind of thing. It's very unusual for that to happen. So many of them end up doing regional tours, and that kind of stuff is the sort of thing that they have to do. And I always say that, you know, while you're studying, get involved with Amdram companies and all that kind of stuff. And it's the same with film. You know, get yourself doing absolutely as much as you can. And yes, you're going to be working for a pittance at best for a few years, but do as much of that as you can and get a resume and the experience. There's a good reason why so many of the directors today, some of the big directors that you know of, started off in some really, really cheap independent movies, and why so many of them made movies like this. Because if somebody had come to Sylvester Stallone after Rocky, says, "Do you want to do Deathrace 2000?" He'd probably have to have turned them down. But you know, films like this got him into the industry. Yeah, but you won't get any if you don't do some, and that's why you should make a lot of small movies. John Rennie is a very good person to chat to about that kind of stuff, because you know that's something that he does. He does his own films and stuff on the side. Um, yeah, you gotta. There's there's very few opportunities unless you kind of make opportunities for yourself in the entertainment industry. And sometimes you'll end up as a Roger Corman, and other people will end up as Steven Spielberg, um, and all shades in between. But if it's something you want to do, you just got to go out and do it. And to some extent, you got to go, well, hang, the idea of making money out of it for now would just try and break even at best, and have fun doing it, and that's the important thing. Experience is vital, Glenn. If they do Amdram student film, they learn from skills. Yeah, you learn a lot from the amateur circuit, and just going out and doing shit yourself, really. It's the best education yet you can possibly get is just doing stuff. You want to be a writer, then fucking well write. If you want to be a filmmaker, go out, make films. And Sam Raimi and the likes were all out making 16mm films with their mates, having a bit of a laugh, not expecting the world of it, and it became, passion became a career. It's probably as it should be with artistic endeavours, but yeah, you do it. It does mean you're going to struggle for a while, but it ain't working at Tesco's, put it that way. It's Mr. Frankenstein. Sir, woman. If you're going to worry about that, then you have to think twice about doing it. But to some extent, you just got to have a bit of confidence in yourself and belief in what you're doing. Even if, like I say, you just do it for fun and learn from it and figure out whether or not it's something you can do for a living. Nobody can take you along with them, generally speaking. You see that stuff happen in Hollywood and it doesn't often work out well. They got better. Ireland has introduced basic artist wage for those who don't want to be on the dole or between jobs. It's €350 a week, which isn't that bad, and I don't think it's means tested. That's interesting. The arts is actually very important to an economy, but it is also dependent on other aspects of the economy. The dancing in pants scene, yes. I bet it was meticulously storyboarded, this scene. But yeah, Kieran, if you want to make films, and don't worry about what people think about it. You've only got to really justify it to yourself. It's nice to have an audience, but you can't always expect it. I kind of, when I started doing all this YouTube stuff, I had every expectation that I would be. Oh, they've got his and hers pants. Same colour. Coordinated. You have an artist visa in Berlin. Ah, that's cool. Something I hate about my life, I've always had this feeling that people mock me when I'm not looking. Yeah, and you have to just not give that much of a shit about it. I know it's easier said than done, but if you've got something you want to be, you're passionate about, go ahead and do it. I said when I started the YouTube and thing, I had every expectation that you'd get a lot of shit talk, and I've had a lot of shit talk along the way, but you learn to kind of divide legitimate criticism from just what we know now as the haters. One of the big processes of growing up, really, is learning what is legitimate criticism. You should, Timbo says, make art as you can and as best as you can. It's art's art should be as much for yourself, for the artist, as it is for the masses. It's my obligation as a national hero. And if it happens, it happens. I think Batzella was kind of caught up in, because the guy was doing it absolutely for a living. Same as Jess Franco on occasions, plenty of occasions, and Bruno Mattei and Joe D'Amato and God knows how many other directors. They all made some terrible films for just to put food on the table and stuff like that. I can think of worse ways of doing it. But make a few smaller movies, just shorts. See what you can do with it. But don't skip the writing. Have a good basis for whatever you're filming. If you can get the writing right, the characterization and that kind of stuff, if you get that nailed down, then a lot of the aspects of filmmaking come in from there. At least in my opinion. Sort of the sacrificial virgin. Oh, that's saying something, isn't it? Snappy. Oh, God bless. That's like commission I'm working on is adapting a local author's collection of short stories into 10 one-act plays. It's long and tiring, but I enjoy it. Plus, the local author is a fave teacher from school. Oh, that's neat. You know what? I don't know, Kieran. Forgetting how much fun this film is. Yeah, it's goofy as hell. It barrels along at a good pace as well, doesn't it? You know, no pun intended. I'm going to get another beer. I will be right back. I love how these people are kind of treated as the sort of the moral busybodies. Considering what it is they're up against. I'll have a quick look. Yeah, apparently it was Dick Miller. Part of the Chicken Gang. Well, if you ever do that kind of thing, Kieran, then a good exercise is always to try and find the good in his movies as well. Because that one we watched the other week was pretty decent. Louis Tree, who directed Alligator, was playing the Toreador earlier, apparently. Oh, really? Okay. John Landis is one of the mechanics. See, that's a good example, isn't it? It's like so many of these directors, these people who went onto the mainstream, they cut their teeth in films like this. In fact, when you look at the likes of Joe D'Amato and Jess Franco and Bruno Mattei and all those Euro sleaze directors, so many of them worked with some very, very big names in like often the Italian film industry. Ron Howard starred in Roger Corman films. Yeah, for all the criticism that could be fired at Roger Corman for his movies by probably snootier critics, to say the least, there is something about that business model that has done far more good than any Hollywood studio, in my opinion, for the world of filmmaking. Oh, that was gratuitous. You got a wonderful opportunity for kind of distributing these days, Kieran, in a way that a lot of these people didn't have at the time, at least not easily. We have the internet, so but I'm not saying you should go out and make movies and that kind of stuff. But if you want to do it, go do it, and don't let anything stand in your way. Learn where the limitations are. Learn how to cope with problems and things that you can't do, and all that kind of stuff. One wonderful thing about movies like this, these low budget films, is that they always had to kind of find ways around problems without throwing lots and lots of cash at them. And you've got so many opportunities now. Cameras that are capable of doing what you need them to do are cheap, relatively speaking. So you can pick up the equipment and all that kind of stuff, relatively easily. Editing, you can do that on your computer. Writing, you can do that on your computer. Oh god, it's the Wile E. Coyote approach to sabotage. Don't. See, they missed a trick here. They should have just been driving through that thing, and then they kind of like just look down. There's just nothing there. Now, kind of like, as soon as they realise that there's nothing beneath them, then they fall. The Roadrunners are literally called Beep Beep in French version. It's like Russian media, isn't it? Why was that ever a thing? Getting a tyre and punching it along with a stick. Frankenstein's got a scarred past, hasn't he? It never comes easy. I still remember the first hit. Viscera in my hair. John Landis, Robert Zemeckis, both protégés of Roger Corman. James Gunn started off in Troma films. Again, Troma films is another good example. Whatever you think of their films, some are great and others are just pure trash. But I love the philosophy of the business, and a lot of people just got their start in that kind of stuff. It's one of the wonderful thing about a lot of these movies, you watch a film like this and you don't feel like that kind of filmmaking is out of your reach. I mean, that's not to say that it's easy, because it isn't. Making a film is fucking difficult, even with some of the cheapest of films and crappiest of films. The whole process is arduous, but there's something about these films that just, it's more inspiring in some respects than Hollywood, because you sort of go, it's attainable. And everything's in it, all the editing, the writing, and the acting, and the kind of technical work, and the production design, and all that kind of stuff. It's all very complete, but it's in a way that's not kind of presenting itself as being above everybody. So it's down to earth about it. So my Statham impression will be a bit more like that. Alright, you slags. Oh God, it's breaking into shock treatment here, aren't we? I know, yeah. But even so. So, yes, sir, we'll just take it over here. Champagne. I've always hated that kind of affectation. Champagne. But she's my navigator. I can't even make my way to the bathroom without her. Didn't he already play a gangster in Capone? I don't know. Sit down, eat. Oh, bless Sly. Sly's so mature but so funny in this. Yeah, Sylvester Stallone is one of those actors that is as much about his charisma as it is about the acting. You know, as a technique. Same with Schwarzenegger. Though Sylvester Stallone does have some decent acting chops along the way as well. But most of the time, it's just that screen presence and charisma. Sly's great in Copland. Yeah, you know what? It's been a very long time since I saw that, but it was a very interesting take. But it was all that kind of introspective sort of period, and him, Schwarzenegger, and a whole bunch of them were really kind of doing that. We're getting older kind of thing. Then they sort of had the midlife crisis thing with the Expendables, but he clearly doesn't know how to punch at this point too. Cobra's a weird one. I always kind of like. I think I struggle with that movie because it's one of those very very heavily rock and roll video style films, sort of pre Michael Bay kind of thing. But Panos Cosmato's dad was the one that directed it, if I'm right in remembering. My God, did their filmmaking styles go in very different directions. But I always remember with Cobra, one of the things is like, because it was one of those films that always stuck out in my mind watching it from being a kid, and then watching it again, and you got that opening with the cult type guys going, it's kind of weird, very strange vibe to it. Still better than Rocky 5. Yeah, Rocky did kind of wander off the path somewhat. I haven't seen the newer ones. How can you accuse me when I have such lovely breasts? Damn, damn. I never had a childhood. I was brought up in a test tube. Cobra at least keeps its car chase at the middle. Usually put up by action movies that put their car chase right at the start or right at the end. One thing I always remember about Cobra though is that bloody the gun with the laser sight on it. It's like kind of like that would look badass, you know. Lasers was just super cool at the time. She has a garden hose for a spine. She's doing some twisting there, isn't she? The camaraderie is just inspiring, isn't it? Best car chase, French Connection. Yeah, yeah. There's been some really great car chases. French Connection's right up there. Although slightly immorally made, to say the least. Most of Violent Rome's chases on YouTube. Yeah. There is nothing like a really well put together car chase. Not too many people really not too many directors really know how to do those kind of things. I'm trying to think of the name of the film, but there's one which is really well choreographed and stuff like that, but the camera for a good chunk of it was literally just put like on the bumper. So you had this real low down sort of front on shot and of the chase, just narrowly avoiding a whole bunch of stuff. It was really quite dynamic. Yes, that was Freaking to a T. Yes. Well, of course, Fly has a coordinated jacket and helmet. At least put a bit of dirt on it. Come on. No, there's another one. It was a, um, it was a much more recent one than French Connection. I mean, the film itself, it was from, and like I say, I can't remember what the film was off the top of my head, but the film it as a whole wasn't that great. I think it had Selena Gomez in it, and but that one scene was quite impressive. Oh no. The tension. Was it layer cake? I honestly can't remember. Um, Getaway. It's called Getaway. Can't remember how good it was since not seen it for years, but Seven Up's had a car chase using many of the same crews from the French Connection. Ah, okay. So much of it's just done with CG and camera tricks, isn't it? I mean, Tom Cruise, for all his faults, where was it Days of Thunder, which was just a pretty risible film for the most part, as far as I'm concerned, was shot very interestingly. For all of his faults, Tom Cruise is very committed to what he does. It wasn't a very well-known film. Didn't do that well, but it's oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, it got John Voight as the bad guy in it, but Ethan Hawke and Selena Gomez. I mean, the whole film's basically about a kind of car chase and stuff like that. They get blackmailed into, well, he gets blackmailed into acting as a kind of decoy to sort of misdirect the police and stuff like that while these criminals do what they want to do. And Selena Gomez is, I think she tried, if I remember right, she tries to steal the car at some point. But so she ends up getting sort of taken along for the ride. There's a lot of dumb in the movie, but the car chase is towards the end is pretty good. Have a swig of Cosby Slow. Even Baby Driver's chases were nothing to write home about, frankly. One of the greatest car stunts ever was Live and Let Die, I believe it was, where they did the corkscrew with the car across the river. That was quite something. In fact, most of the Bond films have some really good kind of automotive chases. But, they always made the effort to make it, live action. And, it's real what they were doing. A lot of it was not faked as many are. So, like, even with this, it's so much over cranking with the cameras and stuff like that. And car chases are expensive and dangerous. So they're sometimes out of the realms of, feasibility for a lot of films. Mad Max is one of the few low budget films that kind of did that stuff like really, really well. Man with a Golden Gun. You're probably right. Yeah. What was it? Oh no, hang on. Whichever one it was, you know the one I mean. It's been so many years since I watched a Bond film, let alone any from that era. What's the guessing that's the only French word that guy knows? I'm going to learn French. What's the French for ass? There's a lot of automotive chases, though, isn't there, in pretty much all of the Bond films. So often, that's one of the iconic things, wasn't it? It was always the cars. Like the Lotus that would go underwater and things like that was always a cool one. Then it got really ridiculous with the was it the Aston Martin with the cloaking shield? Cool. Forgot about the hand grenade. Ass means the same thing in any language. You got some really stylish shots though, haven't they? In this, I mean, it's like this scene is, it's a certain amount of it's kind of sped up, it's overcranked or whatever, but it's very very kind of cool driving scenes in this. And very stylish editing on some of it as well. California desert, yes. It's interesting countryside though, so cul-de-sac means dead end. Well, it's what it means over here. Yeah. See, they always drop oil, and as a motorbiker, I've always found diesel to be far worse than oil on the roads. But I love how it's like, even if I go in a straight line, that the oil kind of instantly flips the car around. I love the safety barriers on that dam. Look far more offensive than just letting them have a sheer drop, to be quite honest. This is your second Deathrace watch along. I don't think I've done it before, so where was the other one? I mean, a cul-de-sac usually refers to a residential road that has a dead end. So, John Landis somewhere in here doing stunts. Oh, when a lot of these the big names guys were doing films like this, yeah, I mean, they're kind of a law to themselves, really, in a lot of respects. There was an awful lot of stuff that they did which could be quite comfortably described as almost guerrilla filmmaking. So, yeah, it's not always the most sensible. Hearts out to Sly. Oh, the irony. It's always the French. He looks altogether far too naked in this shot. See, I would have said that wouldn't really kind of kill him. It could hurt a bit, but I mean, it wasn't that big a fall. Did I hear this American fella say the French are enemy? Yes. We all did after giving them a goddamn statue. Yeah, I know the Americans have not exactly been terribly grateful, considering the French pretty much were the turning point of America being America, as in the United States eventually. Cover up that Frankenwilly, yeah. Roger Corman wanted it's savage and violent, but Bartel needed to inject the humour. Yeah, and it's probably just as well. Um, I think the movie's kind of much more memorable because it has a sense of humour about itself. It still has its brutality, you know. It's a little bit of commentary there, isn't there? I refuse to believe a sports car like that would be able to drive over someone terribly easily. Clearance is like about that much on the damn things. Anyone seen Eating Raoul? I've heard of it, but I've not seen it. It kind of feels like lead wood with that monologue over the credits there. Got to be 500 points. Yeah, I reckon so. Yeah, and that was fun. Yes, Simon. I'm glad I did this one. It's such a long time since I watched it, so always a lot of fun revisiting that. So that's been great. So, like I say, there will be no stream next week, as I will be packing my bags to go visit my brother and the rest of the family. The week after, I think we'll probably be able to do something on whenever. We will figure it out. It'll either be the Friday or the Saturday, depending. But I'm thinking Sword and the Sorcerer might be one of them. I think we might do a double bill on the next one. What I would say is we should, in the Rambleaholics, be thinking about something for the 28th of October, the Halloween stream, as Halloween's on Tuesday or whatever it is, I think it is. But we'll do one on the Saturday before that, perhaps make that a double bill. So in the Rambleaholics, certainly have I think about what we can watch. The list that is attached to this particular film that we watched is quite a good one for finding, some stuff. But I don't know what in there is particularly kind of Halloween themed. But let's find something suitable, and we will watch out for the Halloween stream, which I'm quite looking forward to. I think that should be quite good fun. Roger Corman used the money he made from his cheap B movies to finance screenings of art films which otherwise wouldn't be shown. I wasn't aware of that, but that's really cool. And that's the thing, even the Cormans, the world were film lovers. They're just kind of like, it was a business as much as it was a lifestyle with these things. So, but you can sort of tell there are some, ambitions in a lot of the Roger Corman films. It's usually, or quite often, there's something which is sort of going on in the background, even if it's fairly frivolously handled. It's always seems to be trying to do, at least kind of like have some heart to the film. But this is a really good one. Do I have to join Facebook again to suggest a film? Rambleaholics is the best place for it. I can't think of any other venue for it, to be honest with you. I'm rarely on Twitter these days. Probably even less so when Elon Musk takes over. But yeah, at the moment that's the best option, and it's literally so I can kind of channel all the stuff through one source, because what with time and stuff like that, I don't have a lot of time to manage 15 different social media things. But so apologies for that. But yeah, Sword and Sorcerer would be cool. Corman was the youngest director to get a retrospective at the Cinémathèque Française, or Cinémathèque Française, when they did one on him. Oh, that's cool. Sword and Sorcerer with Matt Hooton. Not sure, but yeah, Sword and Sorcerer. You know, that one, which is on this list. But anyway, I think we'll call it a day there. So thank you very much for joining. It's a short and sweet film, but we did get a bit of chatting there at the beginning and stuff like that. But we'll call it an evening there, and I will bid you a good weekend. Have a good time, and I will see you most likely in a couple of weeks. And up until then, I'll be on Facebook and stuff. But yeah, thanks for joining. Take care. We'll see you soon. Good night.